If you told me a week ago I'd be replaying a stranger's touch in my head like a favorite song, I would have laughed in your face. I don't do impulsive. I'm the type of guy who plans his weekends in bullet points, who orders the same turkey sandwich from the same deli every Monday, who believes massage parlors are for stressed-out finance bros or influencers on wellness retreats. Not me. But that was before I met Liam. It started because of my back. Or maybe it was because of my breakup. Either way, I'd been tense for weeks, grinding my teeth, snapping at coworkers, struggling to sleep. A friend of mine, Shane, swore by this place near Midtown. They're discreet, he said, and some of them go the extra mile. That should have been my red flag. But I was exhausted, mentally and physically, and the idea of being touched, even just in a non-sexual therapeutic way, sounded like the one thing I hadn't tried yet. So I booked a session. Saturday, 5 p.m., I almost backed out twice. The place was nicer than I expected. Low lighting, clean minimalist furniture, a faint smell of eucalyptus in the air. The front desk was empty when I walked in, just a small silver bell and a clipboard that said, "Check-in." I signed my name, sat down, and tried not to let my nerves show. A few minutes later, a guy stepped out from one of the side rooms. "Jason?" he asked. I stood. "Yeah, that's me." He smiled. It hit me like a slap. This wasn't what I expected. He was tall, lean but toned, with warm brown eyes, scruffy facial hair, and arms inked with subtle black and gray tattoos that disappeared under the sleeves of his fitted polo. "I'm Liam. You're with me today." And just like that, I was following him down a hallway, trying not to stare at the way his shoulders moved under his shirt. "Any specific pain points I should know about?" he asked, opening the door to a softly lit room with a massage table and shelves of oils and towels. "Lower back, mostly," I said, clearing my throat. "I've been sitting too much lately." Liam nodded. "We'll fix that. Go ahead and undress to your comfort level and lie face down under the sheet. I'll give you a minute." And then he was gone. I undressed slowly, folding my clothes into a neat pile on the chair. I left my briefs on, just in case. My skin already felt warm from the anticipation as I slid under the sheet. The table was heated, soft, almost too comfortable. I closed my eyes and exhaled. Then the door opened again. Footsteps padded across the room. The faint squeak of lotion in his hands. And then his touch. His hands were firm, confident. No hesitation, no small talk. He started at my shoulders, kneading deep into the knots that had been camped there for weeks. I let out a low, involuntary sound. Liam chuckled softly behind me. "That bad, huh?" "Worse," I muttered into the table. He kept working, down my back, across my shoulder blades. His hands moved slowly, pressing, circling, digging into the tension. Every now and then, his fingertips would graze just a little closer to the sides of my torso. Not inappropriately, but enough to make me wonder if he noticed the way I was starting to breathe. "Let me know if the pressure's too much," he said, voice low and even. "It's good." I managed. "Really good." He adjusted the sheet lower, exposing more of my back, just above the waistband of my underwear. His hands moved down, pressing into the curve of my lower back, the base of my spine. His fingers were warm, slightly oily, and way too close to the edge of my briefs. I bit the inside of my cheek. Was I imagining it? The way he lingered there? He leaned closer, his voice just above my ear. "You're holding a lot in this area." "Yeah," I said, swallowing hard. "It's been a stressful few weeks." He murmured. "You need to let go." The room felt warmer now. Or maybe that was just me. His hands moved lower again, brushing the sides of my hips. More direct this time. Still within the bounds of a massage, but definitely pushing the edge. And I didn't say anything. I didn't stop him. I didn't want to. He paused. "Do you want me to keep going?" he asked, quiet, careful. I hesitated. Then I nodded, and everything changed. When I nodded, there was a tiny pause. Barely a heartbeat, but I felt it, like Liam was making sure he'd actually seen what he thought he saw. Then his hands returned to my lower back, slower this time, more deliberate. The kind of touch that didn't pretend to be strictly professional anymore. The sheet shifted slightly as he worked, and I heard the faintest rustle as he adjusted it. My pulse thudded in my ears. The room felt different, quieter somehow, heavier, like the air had thickened with the unspoken thing happening between us. "Tell me if anything feels uncomfortable," he murmured. I didn't trust my voice, so I just said, "Okay," trying to sound normal. I failed. His hands slid lower again, thumbs pressing into the muscles right above the waistband of my briefs. He lingered, warm and firm. Every point of contact sent a pulse of heat through me. I gripped the sides of the table, not from pain but from a tension I couldn't hide anymore. "You're really tight here," Liam said, his voice dropping slightly. "You have no idea," I breathed. He chuckled under his breath, not mocking, more like he knew exactly what I meant. His thumbs worked in slow circles, dipping just under the top edge of my underwear. Not enough to be explicit, but enough to make my breath catch. "You're doing great," he said softly. "Great?" I wasn't doing anything, except trying not to melt through the table. Then he moved to one side, standing closer. I felt the heat of his body near my hip, his presence suddenly overwhelming in the small room. His hands steadied my lower back while the other glided down along the side of my ribs, tracing the natural line of my torso. That touch wasn't accidental. My skin prickled. "Jason," he said, quiet but purposeful. "Yeah?" My voice cracked embarrassingly. "Relax your legs." I hadn't even realized I'd tensed them. I exhaled, letting them go slack. "Good," he murmured, his tone softer now, warmer. "That's better." He moved lower, kneading into the muscles around my hips. The sheet slipped an inch. I felt the cool air hit the exposed part of my skin. Then his fingertips brushed the top of my thigh, just barely, and my whole body reacted before I could stop it. He felt it. I knew he did. His touch paused, just for a second, like he was checking if I already regretted it. I didn't. He continued down my thigh, slow strokes, firm but careful. There's nothing inappropriate about a thigh massage, except when the person doing it keeps drifting closer to the inside, testing the boundary, waiting to see if you flinch or lean into it. I didn't flinch. He stopped again, not removing his hands, just hovering there, thumb lightly tracing the curve where my hip met my leg. "You're responding," he said quietly. I didn't know if he meant physically or emotionally. Probably both. "Is that okay?" he added, his voice softer now, almost intimate. I swallowed. "Yeah, it's okay." He exhaled, like he'd been holding his own breath. Then he placed a hand gently on the back of my shoulder, grounding me. "Turn over," he murmured. The room felt too small, too warm. My heart hammered against the table. I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to, but because it felt like crossing an invisible line. Liam noticed. "You're safe," he said quietly, "and you're in control. If you want to stay like this, we stay like this." Something about his voice, steady, patient, steadying, cut right through my anxiety. I nodded again, slower this time, and turned over beneath the sheet. I kept it pulled up to my waist, but even that felt like too little. My face was hot. My chest rose and fell too quickly. Liam stood beside me, watching, not staring, not ogling, just watching with this careful, unreadable expression, like he was trying to understand me before he made another move. "You okay?" he asked. His voice had changed. Gone was the professional tone. Gone was the casual ease. This was lower, softer, like it was just for me. "I'm fine," I said, though my voice sounded anything but fine. He smiled, small, warm, reassuring, and sat on the stool beside the table. "Let me take care of the front of your shoulders," he said, reaching for more lotion. Still just a massage, nothing you don't want. But when his hands touched my chest, slow and steady, sliding outward toward my shoulders, his thumbs grazed the edges in a way that made my breath stutter. He looked down at his hands as he worked, like he was focusing, but I caught the way his eyes flicked up to mine every few seconds, checking me, reading me. The silence stretched, heavy and electric. Then he leaned in slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Jason, if you want more than this, you need to tell me." My stomach flipped. I should have said something right then, but the words caught in my throat. Not because I didn't know what I wanted, because I knew exactly what I wanted, and saying it out loud felt like stepping off a cliff. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, there was a sound from the hallway, footsteps, a soft knock on a door nearby, muffled voices. Liam froze. He pressed a hand lightly to my sternum, steady but gentle. "Don't move," he whispered, leaning closer. His breath brushed my cheek. The door handle clicked. And then, someone opened our door. The door opened only a few inches, just enough for a sliver of hallway light to cut through the dim room. My heart stopped. Liam's hand was still on my chest, warm and steady, but every muscle in his body went rigid. "Liam?" A voice called quietly from the hallway. A woman, probably the receptionist. "You almost done? Your next client is waiting." Liam shifted his weight subtly, sliding his hand off me so smoothly it looked natural, professional, like nothing out of the ordinary had been happening. My pulse was going insane, pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Give me 5 minutes," Liam said, his tone instantly back to business, calm, composed. Not a single hint of the tension that had been thick in the room seconds before. "Okay," she said. The door clicked shut. Silence returned. The second the door was fully closed, Liam let out a breath. Not loud, not dramatic, just this small, controlled exhale like he'd been holding it the whole time. He looked at the door for a moment, making sure it latched, then turned back to me. And damn, the look on his face made heat crawl up my neck. Gone was the professional veneer. His eyes were darker now, like what almost happened had only sharpened whatever he'd been trying to hold back. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded, probably too fast. "Yeah, just surprised." "Me too," he admitted. He sat back on the stool, but he wasn't hiding the way he was looking at me now. Not reading me, wanting me. And there was something else under it too. Restraint, like he was fighting himself not to do something impulsive. "We should keep things normal for a minute," he said, even as his eyes dropped to my chest again. "Just until she walks away." I swallowed hard. "Okay." He placed his hands on my shoulders. Safe, appropriate, definitely not the kind of touch that made my breath hitch earlier. But even then, I could feel the warmth of his palms, the tension coiling beneath the surface. He massaged the fronts of my shoulders, gentle, clinical, and it took everything in me not to react, not to shift, not to reach out and pull him back down where he'd been before the interruption. "I'm sorry about that," he murmured. "We don't usually have people barging into rooms. She knows better." "It's okay. I mean, nothing happened." Liam's hand stilled for half a second. Then he leaned in, his voice dropping to that intimate, low register again. "Jason, something is happening." My chest tightened. The good kind. He swallowed once, like he was choosing his next words carefully. "But I can't let it happen here. Not while I'm on the clock. Not with people walking around." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I get that." His thumb brushed the curve of my shoulder. Barely a touch, a whisper of one, but it felt like fire along my skin. "I want you to understand something," he said. "I didn't misread you," he paused. "And I don't think you misread me either." My breath caught. "No, I didn't." His jaw flexed, just a little, like he wasn't used to showing this much emotion. Or maybe because admitting it made something inside him unravel. He straightened slightly, hands resting gently on the table beside me now. "I have to finish your session, professionally." He said it like it hurt. "But when we're done, if you want to talk, really talk, you can wait for me out front." My stomach flipped. Hard. "Talk?" I repeated softly. A tiny smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Talk. Or something else. That's up to you. The room felt smaller again, warmer, charged. Now, he said, regaining his composure, I'm going to finish your chest and arms. Just relax. Relax, right? Sure. Totally possible after being told, wait for me and we'll see what happens. He started working on my right arm, kneading down the muscle slowly. His touch was professional again. Almost. But every now and then, his fingertips lingered a second too long. Or his hands slid just slightly closer to the inside of my elbow, my bicep, my wrist. Touches that weren't necessary. Touches that weren't accidents. Touches that told me exactly how hard he was working to keep himself in check. When he finished my second arm, he stepped back slightly, like he needed a breath. Okay, he said softly. Flip onto your stomach again. I'll finish with your lower back and legs. My body reacted before my brain did. I turned, the sheets sliding lightly over my hips. I settled face down, heart racing again, hearing him move behind me. Closer. Good, he murmured. Just breathe. The table shifted slightly as he placed his hands on my lower back again. But this time, there was no pretending. His thumbs pressed in just above the waistband of my underwear, slow and firm, and the warmth of his palms spread outward, sending a shiver up my spine so intense I had to bite the inside of my cheek to stay quiet. You're still tense, he whispered, almost amused. I'm trying. Liam leaned in so close I felt his breath on the back of my shoulder. Don't try, he murmured. Just let me. And then his hand slid lower. Lower than before. Lower than any massage should have gone. I sucked in a breath. The kind you can't hide. Liam paused only for a second. Then his palms moved again, deliberately tracing the line between what he could do and what he wanted to do. Jason, he said quietly, I'm going to need you to tell me to stop if you want me to. But stopping was the last thing on my mind. He said stop, but what he really meant was tell me to keep going. I didn't say either. I just breathed, slow, shaky, betraying exactly how much I wanted whatever was coming next. Liam's hands stayed where they were, right at the edge of my briefs, his thumbs brushing the sensitive spots just above the waistband. Every tiny motion sent a charge up my spine. He wasn't rushing, he wasn't pushing, he was testing, feeling, learning me. The music in the room, soft, rhythmic, almost hypnotic, blended with the sound of my own breathing. It felt like the entire world had condensed down to this table, this touch, this moment. Still okay? He murmured. Yeah, I said, my voice low, warm, embarrassingly honest. I'm really okay. He let out a quiet breath, not a sigh, more like relief. Then his hands slid lower again, slow, controlled, his thumbs dipping past the waistband and brushing the skin of my hips, bare skin. I jerked slightly, not from discomfort, but because it was the first truly intimate contact he'd made. And his touch there felt different, not professional, not even close. Thought so, he whispered. His fingertips pressed into the muscles along the top of my glutes, working them with slow, deliberate movements. It was still technically a massage. Technically. But the way he was touching me, the way his hands lingered, curved, explored, there was nothing technical about it. I swallowed hard, gripping the sides of the table a little tighter. My breathing had gone ragged, uneven, betraying every thought ricocheting through my head. You're very responsive, he said softly. That isn't usually a problem, I muttered into the table. He chuckled, quiet, warm, the kind of laugh that made something deep in my stomach tighten. Good to know. His hands slid outward, along my hips, tracing the lines where muscle met skin. He didn't push the sheet further, didn't expose anything more, didn't cross the line completely. He was hovering on it, purposefully, expertly, teasingly. You want me to keep going? He asked again. But this time, the question wasn't about massage technique. It wasn't about pressure or tension or anything remotely professional. It was about us. It was about what was building between us, so thick and undeniable I could practically taste it. "Yes," I said quietly. "Please." The moment the word please slipped out, he froze again. But not from hesitation. This time it felt like I'd unlocked something in him. Something he was holding back until he knew I wanted it as badly as he did. "Lift your hips just a little," he murmured. My heart almost dropped through the table. I did. Slowly. And Liam adjusted the sheet with a precision that felt way too careful to be innocent. He never touched anything he shouldn't. But he exposed the top of my hips, just enough for his hands to move freely, just enough for me to feel every single thing he was doing, without anything blocking it. His thumbs pressed into the base of my spine again, firmer this time. "You needed this," he whispered. "Yes." I breathed. "God, yes." He kneaded down along the sides of my hips, into the upper part of my thighs. The movements were slow and rhythmic, and every time his hands dipped inward, closer to the inside of my thigh, my whole body reacted. I felt my breath stutter. He heard it. "You're shaking," he said. "I'm trying not to embarrass myself." He let out a soft, amused sound. "You're not embarrassing yourself." His hands moved lower again, down the back of my thighs, squeezing, massaging, kneading deeper. His grip was firm, confident, and so sure of me it made the tension in my chest coil tighter. Then he leaned in, just slightly. His voice came from close to my ear. "You know, you don't have to hold anything back." I closed my eyes. Hard. "Liam." His hands slid back up, slow as sin, until his thumbs were just beneath my waistband again. "Mm-hmm," he answered, like he already knew what I was trying to say. I didn't get the chance, because right then, he moved his thumb just a little too far inward. Not enough to cross the line, but enough to make my whole body jolt. I gasped, grabbing the edge of the table. Liam stilled. "Jason," he murmured, voice rougher now. "If we keep going like this, I'm not going to be able to pretend it's just a massage anymore." My breath hitched. "Then don't pretend." He exhaled, a deep, shaky, finally letting go kind of exhale. But then he pulled his hands back. Slowly, carefully, too carefully. I panicked for half a second, thinking he'd changed his mind. But then he spoke. Quiet, low, intense. "Session's over," he said. "Get dressed. Wait for me in the lobby." My stomach dropped, but not in a bad way. "What? Why?" Liam stepped back from the table. I could feel the distance instantly. His voice was calm, steady, but filled with something thick and impossible to misread. "Because what I want to do next," he said, "I can't do in this room." A shiver tore through me. He walked toward the door, hand on the knob, then paused and looked back over his shoulder. Eyes dark, jaw tight. "And believe me," he added, "I'm going to do it, if you're still out there." Then he left. The door clicked shut behind him, and I lay there, heart pounding, already knowing I wasn't going anywhere. I don't know how long I stayed on the table after he left, maybe 30 seconds. Maybe a full minute. My mind was racing so fast, the room felt like it was tilting. I finally pushed myself up, the sheet pooling around my waist, my skin still buzzing from every place he'd touched. "Session's over, get dressed, wait for me in the lobby." There was no universe where I wasn't going to do exactly that. My hands were shaking when I got dressed. Not from nerves, okay? Maybe a little, but more from the adrenaline flooding my system. When I pulled my shirt over my head, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. Flushed cheeks, hair messed up from the massage table, eyes darker than usual. I looked like someone who'd just crossed a line he couldn't uncross. Good. I stepped into the hallway, my pulse thudding so hard I half expected someone to hear it. The lobby was quiet except for the soft trickle of the little waterfall in the corner. A couple sat on the far side of the room filling out forms, not paying attention. The receptionist glanced up when I walked in, gave a polite smile, then went back to her scheduling screen. No sign of Liam yet. I sat down on one of the cushioned chairs near the corner, the spot closest to the hallway he'd walked down. I kept my leg bouncing without meaning to, trying to look normal, casual, like I wasn't waiting for the man who had just pressed his thumbs into places no massage therapist should have gone. Minutes passed. 1, 3, 5. Then, a door opened somewhere down the hall. I heard footsteps. Slow, not rushed, like he knew exactly what he was walking toward. Liam appeared around the corner. This time, he wasn't smiling politely. He wasn't holding himself in professional posture. He wasn't wearing that calm, unreadable mask he'd had on earlier. He looked at me like he was remembering every sound I made under his hands. I stood automatically. He jerked his head slightly toward the front door. Come on. No explanation. No small talk. Just that steady, low tone that made heat curl low in my stomach. I followed him out into the evening air. The sun had dipped behind the buildings, leaving the sky in that strange blue shade between twilight and nightfall. The city felt quieter than usual, like it was making space for whatever was about to happen. "Where are we going?" I asked as he led me down the sidewalk. He didn't look back. "Somewhere we won't get fired or arrested." "Solid plan," I muttered. He huffed out a laugh. Short, breathy, not entirely composed. Then he slowed, glanced behind us as if checking the street, and stopped in front of a small alley between two buildings. Clean, not dark, not creepy, just tucked away enough that nobody walking by could see inside. He stepped in. I hesitated at the entrance for half a second. He turned toward me fully for the first time, expression serious. "Jason," he said quietly, "if you don't want this, if any part of you doesn't want this, walk away now." I didn't move. I didn't even blink. He waited another second, searching my face, and whatever he saw there made his jaw tighten in a way I felt in my chest. "Okay," he said. "Come here." I stepped into the alley, my breath catching when I realized how close we suddenly were. Just a foot apart. Maybe less. Liam lifted one hand, slowly, giving me all the time in the world to back away. I didn't. His fingers brushed the side of my jaw, the touch so gentle it made me shiver. "You have no idea," he whispered, "how hard it was to keep my hands where they were." My pulse thudded once, deep and heavy. "I think I do," I murmured. His eyes flicked to my mouth, then back to my eyes. Then he exhaled like he'd been holding the tension for hours. "I shouldn't do this," he muttered. "You already did." I shot back softly. That did it. His other hand slid around my waist, pulling me a half step closer. My breath caught. I could feel the heat radiating off him, the faint scent of massage oil still on his skin. "Last chance to walk away," he said, voice low and rough. I lifted my chin just slightly, closing the remaining inches between us. Not a chance. Liam didn't kiss me. Not at first. He pressed his forehead to mine, like he needed that one last moment to steady himself. His hand on my waist tightened, fingers curling into the fabric of my shirt. His breathing was uneven now, matching mine. "You almost made me lose it in there," he whispered. "You weren't the only one." He let out a soft, strained sound, half laugh, half groan, and then finally, he closed the distance. His mouth hit mine with a kind of controlled urgency, like he'd been holding back for too long, and this was the only way he knew how to release it. I grabbed the back of his neck instinctively, pulling him closer, feeling the warmth of his body press into mine. He kissed like he'd been thinking about it the entire session. Slow at first. Testing. Then deeper, hungrier, pulling me fully against him with a low sound in his throat that sent a shiver straight through me. His hand slid up my back, warm and steady, while the other stayed at my waist, guiding me gently, like he knew exactly how fast he wanted this to go. When we finally broke apart, both of us trembling, both breathing like we'd just run a mile, he rested his forehead against mine again. "This isn't enough," he said quietly. "Not even close." My knees nearly gave out. then take me somewhere it can be. He froze just long enough to let the weight of my words settle. Then, he grabbed my hand. Not roughly, not possessively, just certain. "Okay," he whispered. "My place." And we slipped out of the alley together, the city buzzing around us, completely unaware how fast everything between us was about to change. We walked fast. Not because we were in a rush, exactly, but because the tension between us was so thick it practically pushed us forward. Every few steps, our hands brushed. Not an accident. Liam wasn't the kind of guy who had accidents. It was more like he was reminding himself I was really there, that this was actually happening, that I hadn't changed my mind. We rounded a corner onto a quieter street lined with small apartments above storefronts. Liam slowed slightly, his hand brushing the small of my back as we approached a brick building with an iron staircase leading up. "This is me," he said. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. The doorway felt like a threshold. Like stepping through it meant the night would become something else entirely, something I couldn't rewind or disguise as a misunderstanding. Liam unlocked the door and held it open. I stepped inside. His apartment was warm and dimly lit, a mix of modern and worn-in comfort. A dark gray couch, a shelf full of art books and vinyl records, a small kitchen with coffee mugs drying by the sink. The faint smell of eucalyptus still clung to him, drifting subtly into the air. "Make yourself comfortable," he said, locking the door behind us. I turned toward him as he slipped off his jacket and hung it on a hook by the entrance. Without the polo and dim spa lighting, he somehow looked even better. Broad shoulders, lean torso, the tattoos on his arms more visible now. He ran a hand through his hair and exhaled, a slow, steadying breath. "You sure you're okay?" he asked. I stepped closer. "I'm more than okay." His lips twitched. Almost a smile. But there was something else in his eyes now. Something raw, like he'd been holding himself together all this time and was only now letting the cracks show. "Because I need you to be clear, Jason," he said, voice low. "If I touch you again, I'm not stopping." My breath caught. "Good." He closed the distance in 2 slow steps. "You don't have to be brave right now," he said softly. "You just have to be honest." I met his eyes. "I'm here because I want you." That did it. His restraint snapped, not violently, not aggressively, but with a heat that had been simmering under the surface for the entire massage. He took my face in both hands, pulling me against him as his mouth met mine again, harder this time. I didn't hold back either. My fingers tangled in the hair at the nape of his neck, pulling him closer, kissing him like I needed the air he was breathing. The tension that had been building for over an hour exploded between us. He backed me gently against the wall beside the couch, one hand sliding to my waist, gripping just tight enough to draw a sound out of me. His lips moved down to my jaw, then to my neck, slow, deliberate, leaving warmth in their wake. "God, Jason," he murmured against my skin. "Do you know what you did to me in that room?" "Probably the same thing you did to me," I said, my voice barely steady. He smiled against my neck. "Yeah, probably." He lifted his head, his forehead resting against mine for a beat, his fingers tracing the hem of my shirt. "Can I?" he asked. He didn't need to finish the sentence. I raised my arms wordlessly. He pulled my shirt off in one smooth motion. His hands lingered at my sides, tracing the lines of my torso, slower now, almost reverent, like he was taking a second to actually look at me, not just react. "You're beautiful," he said quietly. I laughed under my breath. "I'm really not." "You are to me." The sincerity in his voice almost made my knees buckle. Then he stepped closer, his chest pressing against mine, his lips finding mine again. Slower this time. Deeper, like he finally had time to savor it. His hand slid down my back, fingers tracing the waistband of my jeans. I felt the question in his touch. The moment right before crossing another line. I nodded before he even spoke, his breath hitched. "Bedroom?" Lead the way. He took my hand again, gently this time, not rushed. He guided me down a small hallway to a room lit only by a lamp on the nightstand. The bed was unmade, sheets slightly rumpled, like he hadn't expected company tonight. He turned to me once we were inside, his expression softer than before. "I want to take this slow," he said quietly. "I want to do this right." "You are," I said. "You already are." He kissed me again, slower, deeper, his hands exploring my back, my hips, my waist, with a warmth that wasn't just lust. It was curiosity, excitement, hunger, but also care. Like he couldn't believe I was actually here. Eventually, he lowered me gently onto the bed, his body hovering over mine. His hands traced my torso again, this time with no sheet, no barrier, no need to pretend it was anything other than what it was. "Jason?" he whispered, hovering just above my lips. "Yeah? This is just the beginning." And then he kissed me again, full, slow, all in, just as the room around us seemed to fall away completely. For a second, Liam didn't move. He hovered over me like he was trying to memorize the moment, the shape of my face, the way I was looking up at him, the way the air felt between us. His hand rested on my chest, warm and steady, his thumb brushing lightly along my collarbone. Not rushed, not greedy, just unbelievably present. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded. "Yeah, more than." He dipped his head and kissed me again, slower this time. Unhurried, deliberate, deep enough to make my whole body respond. There was heat, sure, but there was something else too. A kind of surprise, like he didn't expect this to feel the way it did. His lips moved down to my jaw, his hands sliding up my sides, tracing the lines there as if he were learning me inch by inch. Every shift of his weight, every warm breath against my neck made the tension coil tighter inside me, but then he stopped. Not because something was wrong, but because he pressed his forehead to my chest and exhaled, long and steady, like he was trying to keep himself grounded. "You're making it really hard to go slow," he murmured. I slid a hand behind his neck, fingers threading into his hair. "Then maybe don't go slow." He lifted his head, giving me a look that sent a full body shiver down my spine. Dark, wanting, but full of restraint. "Believe me," he said, voice low. "I want to, but if we rush this, I'll regret it. And I don't want to regret anything with you." It hit me harder than I expected, because this wasn't just lust. Not for him, and maybe not for me either. He kissed the center of my chest softly, then moved up again, capturing my mouth in a breath-stealing, pulse-racing kiss that left me gripping the sheets. He wasn't holding back the heat anymore. That part was clear. But he was guiding it, shaping it, savoring it, instead of burning through it. His hand slid down my torso again, stopping at my waist. He looked at me as his fingers grazed the waistband, asking without asking. I nodded. He didn't push further. Instead, he leaned down and kissed my stomach. Slow, warm, gentle, before laying beside me, pulling me into him, his arm draped over my waist. I hadn't expected the intimacy of that simple gesture to hit me harder than everything before it. He buried his face against my neck, his breath warm against my skin. "You feel incredible," he murmured, his hand sliding up my torso in slow, calming strokes. I turned toward him, close enough to feel his heartbeat against mine. "So do you." He smiled against my cheek. A small, real smile. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The room was quiet, except for the faint hum of city noise outside and our breathing slowly sinking. The kind of silence that didn't feel awkward at all. Just right. "I haven't brought someone here in a long time," Liam admitted, voice softer than before. I looked up at him. "I haven't done something like this in a long time either." He brushed his thumb along my jaw, eyes warm. "Feels different, doesn't it?" "Yeah," I said. "It does." He leaned in and kissed me again. Light, lingering, almost shy in contrast to the earlier fire. Then he pulled back slightly, though his forehead stayed touching mine. "You don't have to stay the night," he said, quieter now. "But you can, if you want to." I didn't even hesitate. "I want to." Liam nodded once, like he'd been hoping for that answer but hadn't let himself assume it. He tugged me closer until our bodies fit together naturally, the warmth between us settling into something calmer, heavier, more comfortable. As my breathing evened out, he whispered against my temple, "Good. Because I don't really want to let you go yet." And in the dim light wrapped in his arms, feeling the slow rise and fall of his chest under my cheek, I realized something. I didn't want him to let go either. I must have drifted for a moment, not fully asleep, just sinking into that warm, weightless place between consciousness and something softer. When I blinked back awake, Liam was still beside me, his hand resting over my ribs, thumb brushing in slow, absent-minded circles against my skin. He hadn't moved away. Not an inch. I turned my head slightly, just enough to look at him. His eyes were half-lidded, studying me with that same quiet intensity he'd had in the massage room. Except now, there was no restraint behind it. No need for professionalism. No need to pretend. "What are you thinking about?" I murmured. He shook his head slightly, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Honestly, that I'm trying not to rush you." He paused. "And also, that I'm failing pretty miserably." I laughed under my breath, feeling the low rumble in my chest where it met his. "I don't feel rushed." "Good," he said softly. "I just don't want you to think this is something I do casually. Because it's not." He brushed a strand of hair off my forehead. "I don't cross lines with clients. Ever." His eyes held mine, steady. "You're the first one that made me want to." My breath caught, not in shock, but in that sudden, quiet certainty that what happened tonight wasn't just a heat-of-the-moment thing for either of us. I slid my hand along his side, feeling the warm curve of his torso under my palm. "I don't want this to be casual either." Liam let out a slow exhale, one that sounded like relief. His forehead rested against mine, and he kissed me again, slow, deep, lingering in a way that made my chest tighten. When he pulled back, it wasn't far. "Come here," he whispered. He shifted, guiding me gently until I was on my back again, his body half over mine, not trapping, not heavy, just close. His fingers traced my stomach, then my waist, as if reacquainting himself with every place his hands had wanted to go earlier. Now, without the worry of being overheard or interrupted, he took his time. Every touch was slow, intentional, measured. Not because he was unsure, but because he wasn't in a hurry to get anywhere else. His lips moved along my neck, my collarbone, my chest, like he was mapping the places that made my breath hitch. He paused, hovering over me, his voice low but steady. "Tell me if you want me to stop." I slid my hands up his arms, gripping lightly at his shoulders, drawing him closer. "I don't want you to stop." His expression changed. Something warm, something open, something hungry and tender all at once. He kissed me again, deeper, his hand sliding slowly down my torso, slipping beneath the edge of my waistband in a way that made a full-body shiver ripple through me. Every second after that unfolded slow and deliberate, not rushed, not frantic, just two people learning each other's rhythms, giving just as much as we took. His touches were careful at first, checking my reactions, adjusting, growing surer, the more he understood what made me tense, what made me melt, what made my breath catch in his mouth. And I explored him too, the smooth lines of his back, the warmth of his skin, the way he let out a low sound each time my hands traced the muscles along his ribs. The room faded into something quiet and warm and dim, the kind of place where time didn't feel real anymore. By the time we finally sank into each other fully, breathless, trembling, hearts racing in sync, it didn't feel like the first time with someone new. It felt like the moment we'd been walking toward from the second he laid his hands on me. Later, maybe minutes later, maybe an hour, we ended up tangled in the sheets, our legs casually overlapping, our breathing slowly returning to normal. Liam brushed lazy circles on my chest, his hair slightly mussed, His expression softened into something I hadn't seen from him before. "You good?" he murmured. "Better than good," I said, leaning into the touch. He smiled. Small, but real. "Yeah, me too." Silence settled between us again, but it wasn't heavy. Just restful. Grounded. Warm. Eventually, he shifted closer, pressing a soft kiss to the side of my throat. "You know you don't have to leave tonight." I smirked. "I thought that part was clear," he chuckled. Quiet, breathy, almost disbelieving. "I just wanted to hear you say it." "Then let me be clearer," I said, lifting his chin gently so he'd look at me. "I'm not going anywhere." He kissed me one last time, slow and lingering, like a promise. "Good," he whispered against my lips, "because tonight was only the beginning." And with his arm draped over my waist, his breath warm against my neck, the city humming softly outside the window, I let myself sink into the comfort of that truth. Whatever this was, whatever it was becoming, I didn't want it to end. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not anytime soon.